All right, let's hear it.
All right, let's see it.
Again, Exodus is judicial wisdom for ancient Israel. It is not a universal ethical law. My understanding is you agree with this as well. Judicial wisdom for ancient Israel does not affect the ethical truth of when you become a person. So Exodus 21 gives me no reason to believe that personhood comes after conception.
This is an entirely irrelevant straw man. At no point have I tried to assert that the scriptures establish any kind of ethical truth that you or that anyone else is required to accept. This entire time I have been responding to your claim in response to a question. Here was the original question.
How did we come to the conclusion that the biblical God is pro-life?
Here was your response to that question.
Christians came to that conclusion through the testimony of Scripture, the early church, and science.
My responses are doing one thing and one thing only, demonstrating that your claim is incorrect, that is not where you get the idea from, because that idea is not found in the scriptures, is not found in the early church, is not found in science. You cannot address my actual concerns, and so you're having to come up with other concerns so that it sounds like you are able to engage the argument. You're not engaging my argument. You are engaging an argument that you made up.
The argument is that science has informed us of when a human being begins. We see no morally relevant distinction between a human fetus and a human adult, which is all I need since personhood is about moral status. And Jesus places murder in a moral context so we can reliably conclude that the God of the Bible is pro-life.
This is a non sequitur. Whether or not Jesus places murder in a moral context has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on whether or not full personhood is achieved at the moment of conception.
This is obviously false unless you're using an unusual definition of personhood. Personhood is a philosophical question about when moral status begins. Science can inform the debate about morality with facts, like I've done, but it's not within the scope of science to be specifically concerned with personhood.
It is not solely a philosophical enterprise. Philosophy has a seat at the table, but it is primarily a social enterprise, and there are a lot of different disciplines that look into social phenomena, including two of my own specializations, cognitive linguistics, which brings the cognitive sciences to bear on how language works and how words mean, and the cognitive science of religion, which brings those same sciences to bear on what this thing is that we label religion, which includes an awful lot of discussion of what a person is. In fact, to the book I published last year, Adonai's Divine Images, A Cognitive Approach, has a chapter on personhood. Now, I'm looking at other aspects of personhood, but I have also looked at when personhood develops. And so it falls well within the scope of these two specializations of mine to look at when personhood develops.
A good explanation of the debates in the early church was the lack of modern science. This is why the Catholic Church today regards many church fathers as mistaken.
So, in the original video to which I responded, you said that Christians have come to the conclusion that the biblical God is pro-life because of the testimony of Scripture, of the early church, and of science. And here you throw the early church under the bus and say, well, they're wrong, because you're no longer engaging the original question. You have pivoted, you have shifted the goalposts because you now know your original claim was wrong.
And again, the mere existence of debates in the early church does not establish that personhood begins after conception.
Again, that's not the question.
However, the quote you are referring to is from Peter Singer. In his other book, Practical Ethics, on page 85, he explains that if human being is understood merely biologically, then there's no doubt that it is a human being. Given that I was using the biological notion, your point fails.
Well, let's take a look at Singer's book. So it seems to me you are paraphrasing. This is page 85 of Singer's book. Now, this is the second edition. You may be quoting directly from a first edition to which I don't have access, but the second and third edition are word for word the same. We see down in the bottom paragraph, it is possible to give human being a precise meaning. We can use it as equivalent to member of the species Homo sapiens. So we can determine this scientifically, he goes on. In this sense, there is no doubt that from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is a human being. That seems to be what you're referring to. And you're just saying, that's the sense, that's the one I'm adopting. Therefore, a fertilized egg, an embryo, a fetus, is undoubtedly a human being. Great. You should have read on. In the next paragraph, Singer goes on to say there is another use of the term human, one that has these different features, one that is a person, and that is distinct from the first sense. And then in the bottom paragraph, when choosing which words to use in a situation like this, namely debates about abortion, we should choose terms that will enable us to express our meaning clearly, and that do not prejudge the answer to substantive questions. To stipulate that we shall use human in, say, the first of the two senses just described, in other words, precisely what you did, and that therefore the fetus is a human being and abortion is immoral, would not do. Singer goes on to explain why adopting that first understanding without considering the other understanding is profoundly misguided. But let's look at another chapter where Singer actually directly addresses the question of abortion. So down at the bottom of this page, the value of fetal life, we get an argument against abortion, which has the first premise, it is wrong to kill an innocent human being. Second premise, a human fetus is an innocent human being. Conclusion, therefore, it is wrong to kill a human fetus. This sounds very similar to the conclusion that you arrived at in your original video. But Singer's going to go on to explain why this is problematic. Middle paragraph. The weakness of the first premise of the conservative argument is that it relies on our acceptance of the special status of human life. We have seen that human is a term that straddles two distinct notions, being a member of the species Homo sapiens and being a person. Once the term is dissected in this way, the weakness of the conservative's first premise becomes apparent. If human is taken as equivalent to person, the second premise of the argument, which asserts that the fetus is a human being, is clearly false. For one cannot plausibly argue that a fetus is either rational or self-conscious. If, on the other hand, human is taken to mean no more than member of the species Homo sapiens, then the conservative defense of the life of the fetus is based on a characteristic lacking moral significance, and so the first premise is false. If you want to go on and hear more about Singer's position, then actually read his book. So you argued that my point failed based on a provisional argument that you quoted from a scholar who then went on in the very next paragraph to argue that that provisional argument was false. You didn't even read past your confirmation bias. You are not even fully engaging your own data, and you're not engaging my argument. You're engaging another argument that you have fabricated because you have no way to engage my argument. You are not engaging this argument in good faith, and you are certainly not engaging it on anything remotely approximating an adequately informed level.
You seem to be fallaciously poisoning the well. The argument has nothing to do with identity politics. The only point you would have in saying this is to discredit me.
I am not poisoning the well in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. I am a specialist in the cognitive science of religion, and whether you yourself bring up identity politics or not, it is undergirding public debates about religion. That is the overwhelming academic consensus supported by the consistent testimony of decades of empirical research. And the fact that you don't know that is only further testimony of how much you are not critically examining your own positions.
You restate your initial points about Scripture in the early church, which I addressed.
You nowhere addressed my points.
But then you say this, that personhood certainly does not begin at conception. Based on what? Do scientists look under the microscope and find the moral status? Purely biologically, a human being begins at conception. Your statement is absurd.
Based on a scientific interrogation of a society's consensus view of what personhood is and when it begins, as well as its rationalizations for that consensus. And again, as a specialist in cognitive linguistics and the cognitive science of religion, it is well within my expertise to interrogate conceptualizations of personhood, and I have done so in print.
I'm not ignoring it. Exodus 21 and the early church are not relevant to the ethical truth.
And for the final time, this is a straw man, because this debate is not about the ethical truth. This debate is about your response to the question, how did Christians arrive at the conclusion that the biblical God was pro-life? And your response is that it was based on the testimony of Scripture, the early church, and science. It is based on none of those things, and this debate is over.